So I was heading past Wanaka and I'm getting ready for the Wanaka Hike and Fly in February. So while the day looked like it was starting off reasonably stable, thought it might be a good day to try out Roy's Peak. Here's me thinking, I wonder if I'll see anybody on the track. So after negotiating all the tourists walking up the hill, I was blessed with a lovely still calm lake and some nice regular thermal cycles coming through to launch. I botched my first launch in front of a bunch of tourists by falling backwards over a tussock, but after that was able to get away with a little bit more grace. So the day had started off quite stable with low stratus covering the whole basin, but by the time I got up to launch, the cloud base had lifted heaps and there were nice strong thermals coming off all of these spurs along the front of Roy's Peak. In the top left of the frame here you'll see a hawk joining the thermal with me. First time I've had that, it was awesome.
Man, you can climb!
So at this point it would have been tempting to take the really nice thermals here all the way back up onto the top of the main range, but cloud base was still quite low above the main ridge, so I decided to head along the front face. Now I've got an A wing which is not going to have the glide performance of a B or a C, and so it's tempting to take each climb all the way to the top before setting off, but this time I wanted to experiment with moving off quickly and only taking as much lift from each spur as I absolutely needed to head off for the next one. So whenever I came across a spur, if I didn't hit any lift immediately, I would just turn and fly down the spur until I found something. Now I was pretty excited here because this is the first cross-country flight I've had where it's actually been as advertised on the box, where all the theory that I've tried to apply has actually worked, and I've found lift where I looked for it. So it felt like brave new territory to me to be blasting through each of these little thermals and then carrying on, only taking just as much lift as I needed, maybe putting in one or two turns and then moving along to the next little spur. But the day was just so reliable. There was so many little thermals coming off each side spur. I was starting to wonder if I'd pushed my luck a bit getting towards the end of this ridge, but the gamble was paying off so far. Now I'm less familiar with finding good climbs over the flats. My local sites are all mountainous, so when I got this very welcome climb over the Cadrona, I took it as high as I could just to give myself a bit of time to think and a few options. So once I'd topped out that climb, I then headed off along what turned out to be a very lifty line above the Cadrona riverbed. Now I'm so used to having to make the most out of every climb I get that this idea of blasting along in a straight line, not turning for the beeps, was pretty awesome. So the grand plan at this point is to fly back to my car, which is parked by the park near the foreshore in Wanaka. So I'm going to have to head across town. Now with this thermal you'll hear I get some beeps, I start to turn but then I lose the thermal. So I've obviously turned the wrong way or turned too early. So here you can see I open out the turn a little bit. Well, it's a bit hard to tell, but I open out the turn a bit to see if it's actually further out to my right rather than the left. And when I don't get anything, I straighten up. But funnily enough, that's when I re-find the thermal. As I got closer to the lake and over the edge of town, the thermal started to get weaker, more broken and further apart. It felt like it was getting more stable as I got closer to the lake. And eventually, as I reached the edge of town, I was getting into patches of sustained sink. I suddenly started sinking quickly, so discretion is the better part of valor. There's a lot of bad things to land on down that way, so I'll head out this way. Plenty to play with, landing wise, and there might be a thermal or something. Now I didn't catch it on video, but I had a really nice slow save over one of these paddocks, but as I was climbing out I could see my shadow moving closer and closer to a rider on a horse, and horses and paragliders don't mix, so I pulled the pin and went and landed. As you can see here, there was still lots of life left in the sky by the time I landed. It's a 13.5k 50-minute flight, but that's still awesome by my standards, and I just really enjoyed the fact that for the first time ever, it actually seemed like I knew what was going on and was able to work the day. You can see the nice sky to the south and the big blue hole that there was over Lake Wanaka, but I was a happy chap who had made it back to his car.